Alright viewers, so I've got you down for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Would you like to add some optional rules to that order today? Let's get the ball rolling. Hey guys, Chris with Drop Dice again. It's Saturday, it's Community Saturday. So this week, if you didn't catch it from the intro, what we're talking about is some optional rules and house rules. Earlier this week, Tim over at Samwise 7 RPG posted a video called O5R Dungeons & Dragons 5e Optional Rules. Optional and house rules. I'm going to have a link to it in the description, but basically his video is about 16 optional rules that he's considering for his game. It sounds like a lot, but a lot of it is actually pretty streamlined, and so it does make sense with each other. So what I'm going to do is comment in kind of groups of responses as far as like what the rules are really about. So let's go ahead and kick things off. He's talking about ability scores, choosing races, and how to build a character. I'm all for the way he wants to do it. That's totally up to the GM as far as my opinion is. I like to do the background first, kind of think about where your character started, think about the ability scores, and then look at a class. I know a lot of players are more driven by the class because they're interested in playing something that they haven't. I tend to go with the flow of what my players are interested in doing because I want to keep their fun level where they like it for this portion of the game at least. If I screw up their fun after that, that's all on me. But essentially, you know, I think the way that you're setting it up does sound pretty logical. That's pretty much how I go about it, doing the dice, the race, the background, personality, and then lastly doing your class, really. So I'm definitely on board with you. You mentioned that you want to limit the classes. Let's see. The list you have is Cleric, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, and Wizard, which is pretty substantial lessening of the class list. He talked about he originally wanted to do the big four, which is your Cleric, Fighter, Rogue, and Wizard, but then decided to add the Ranger because he liked the feel of it. My suggestion to you is to check out the Unearthed Arcana that goes into a non-spellcasting Ranger. And I'll go into more detail as to why I think it will fit really well for your game when we get to the other topics, but it should give you a feel of a Ranger without feeling like epic fantasy Ranger that you typically get with D&D. So we'll kind of start there. Let's skip down to the next set of rules. He wants to eliminate social skills, charisma, replace it with sanity to be specific, and basically focus on the role play aspect of that. I'm a little on the fence about this decision because there's kind of an old argument online that if I don't require you to break down my front door to tell me how you got past the dungeon door, I shouldn't require you to role play every social situation. I can kind of get behind that because I've got a player who I won't name, but my friends probably know who he is and will give him flack for showing up in this video. But essentially, he's just generally not a very social guy, but he likes playing social characters. And so what he'll do is he'll play a social character, and the roles will augment his role play, which is how I do it. And instead of looking at the role as a description of how well he succeeds in a social situation, I look at it as the role describes how well it's received in a social situation, which the rules kind of touch on, but I don't think they clarify it very well. So let's say, you know, he rolls a high persuasion check. His persuasion may be something like, "We need your help," which is a very powerful statement on its own. But sometimes it just doesn't feel like it's RP enough, or you get people who don't understand that that is enough in certain situations, and they go, "We need your help to defeat the blah, 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 blah," and then you're waiting like 20 minutes for them to finish up their speech, and then you're like, "Okay, you succeeded, please stop," and they continue. That's where I look at the roles as being beneficial. I love old school games. The term OSR he refers to in his video, for any of my viewers or his viewers that may not be aware of it, OSR stands for Old School Renaissance. Basically, it's taking old tropes, theories, play styles, and applying new streamlined mechanics that have been worked out and tested and understood a little better. Basically, I like these games because generally they don't include THAC0, which if you've played AD&D, you know what I'm talking about. If you're new to the hobby, please don't use THAC0 for your own sanity. Anyways, it's definitely a cool genre. I like it a lot. He mentions the Dungeon World series. There's also Dungeon Crawl Classics, and he mentions one in there called Dragon Warriors, which I haven't read, and I need to because of a rule that he suggests towards the end of his video. We'll get back to that one, but Dragon Warriors is on my list now. Thank you, Tim. All right, so back to this removing charisma thing and replacing it with sanity. So let's take a look here. He's saying he wants to do sanity and madness. I'm down with that if it fits your genre. From the sounds of it, it does fit his genre, so that's going to work perfect. For me, I think I'd do it a little bit differently, actually. I like the idea of removing charisma, but what I think I'd replace it with is honor. I've mentioned in previous videos I like Oriental settings. I like law generally in a lot of games, structure and things like that. And I think a world where your word is only as good as your honor, like truly only as good as your honor, would be really cool. Like anywhere that it says that it's a charisma modifier, replace that with honor modifier, let's say. So that you have this fluctuating stat that's relying upon you doing honorable things and being generally a respectable person. That could really wreck you if you start being a really bad person. So if you're, like, let's say, this is a very simple scenario. You happen to be Paladin of the 7th Sun Citadel, the 3rd class, and you're just this great hero, and you have a lot of respect, both from your profession, your background, your actions, and the way you carry yourself. So you go into a bar, they may just give you your food and allow you to sit down and eat, which is totally weird in a medieval culture. But you're really honorable, so they know you're going to pay at the end, because you have that reputation. Or they may just give you the food for free, which is kind of an extra perk. But let's stick with the paying idea. So let's say his acquaintance, friend, we'll call him Fingers the Thief, with a reputation score of 2, comes in. The bartender may just refuse service because he's got 2 honor and he's afraid the thief is going to steal from his customers. Or B, he might tell him he has to pay up front. Now this is a super minor thing, having one player pay at the end of his meal versus one player pay at the beginning of his meal. But it does reinforce that idea of having honor and it being extremely important inside the culture. Which I may actually just straight steal because I'm liking it the more I talk about it. So thank you for kind of bringing up this idea of getting rid of charisma and replacing it with something. So that I'm right on board with you on that one the more I talk about it. Let's talk about the next bit here. Talk about proficiency with a shifting proficiency dice roll. It's 263 of the DMG for anybody watching. So I don't like it, and I think it goes counterintuitive to what you were talking about inside your video. So in the video you mentioned that for initiative it's a lot of dice rolling and it's a little excessive and you want to do side initiative. If you're going to take out dice rolls, it seems counterintuitive to add another dice roll. It will provide a lot of variance in your game, but at the same time, having a proficiency number does streamline things, and it does make it a little bit easier to continue your combats. So I'm a little in favor of the proficiency number, to be honest. But that's kind of your opinion on it. I would suggest trying it first and let me know how it went. I could be totally wrong, and doing proficiency die roll is awesome. Like I said, once you try it, let me know. It's not something that piques my interest. So I will have to wait for somebody to tell me how it went for them before I decide to use it. Taking out feats, no problems there. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit inside your comments or your optional rules. You're taking out feats and you're also taking out attacks of opportunity. But you're keeping the class features that allow attacks or reactions and the spells that allow reactions. I think this could favor your spellcasters a little bit more than your classes that don't have spells naturally built in them, because generally there are a lot more spell reactions than there are like attacks of opportunity reactions. Because you're taking out feats, you're going to lose a lot of the problems that there are with attacks of opportunity, because you're not going to have some guy who's running around with a glaive who has polearm master and sentinel and heavy armor master who is just this tank that just attacks anything that moves or breathes around him. So I think if you want to go that route of removing the attacks of opportunity, I would almost keep the feats as a way for non-casting casters to gain that, but I think it goes against the some word that I'm forgetting. It goes against the spirit, let's say, of the game that you have in mind. So my suggestion is keep the attacks of opportunity, but maybe limit it to 1 attack of opportunity per round, like 3rd edition did. And since you're not going to have the feats, you're going to have less problems with it. I want to say in 5th edition, if you don't have feats, it is still 1 attack of opportunity per round, so you may not even have to change anything. Let's take a look here. Inspiration points. So I've got 2 ideas. I'm going to talk about the first one right now, and then I'll talk about the other one when we get to another topic. Option 1 and 2 for plot points. I think that's a pretty solid idea. I'm with you. I don't really care for GM-less games. I think that they can be too chaotic for a conducive story, and that's why I just generally don't like them. Plus, 5th edition D&D wasn't really designed with that in mind. It was kind of added as an optional thing. And I think if your players are used to it, you could totally do it. But I think rules as written, if you were to try to do it, it might come off a little wonky. Let's take a look here. XP advancement. Levels 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, I would actually suggest keeping the original experience or maybe just modifying it a little bit. Like right now, you were throwing out numbers and you said 1,200 experience to get to level 2, 2,400 to get to level 3, 48 to get to 4, so on and so forth. The reason I suggest this is in OSR games, typically you have more hit points at the beginning. Unless you're going to give them more hit points to make them more durable during those prime years of adventuring, if you will, I think it might be a little unfair to the players because, like in Dungeon World, you have somewhere between 8 and 20 or so hit points, depending on what you're playing, your stats, etc., which is hugely different than Dungeons & Dragons, which you would have somewhere between like anywhere from like 6, depending on what your constitution is, to 15-ish, depending on your constitution. Which means that, like, your casters especially, they're going to be super fragile. And you mentioned gritty combat. Maybe that's the intention, is to keep them super fragile. But I find that players are almost too fragile at levels 1 and 2, which is why I say maybe not adjust the scale so much for levels 1, 2, and then 2 to 3. That way you can get them to where they're a little meaty, and not every goblin fight will be deadly. Instead, it'll be hard, to use the difficulty encounter idea. So let's go next to, let's see, success at a cost. I played Dungeon World. I love Dungeon World. I love success without a cost. That's one of the rules that I read, but I was already playing 5th edition, and so I didn't implement it on my guys. But the next time I play 5th edition, I will be implementing that. I think it's a great way to go about things, to introduce twists to the story, because to me it's too easy to just be like, you fail, moving on. In Dungeon World, for anybody who hasn't played it, my cat came to see us. Here's Scarlet for anybody watching at home. Now that she feels like she's a YouTube star, maybe she'll go away. So for anybody who hasn't played OSR games, a lot of them do have this idea of success with a cost, or success at a cost. So essentially this is how it works. I'll use the bow and arrow for example. So you have a bow that has 3 ammo. When you attack and you come close to succeeding, or rather they have like a middle ground. There's success with everything goes the way you planned on, success with a cost, which is it will cost you something for that success. One of the options is for the arrow, you expend ammo. And for the bow and arrow, it's not 1 shot equals 1 ammo. It's a abstract number so that you can kind of track without having to micromanage your ammunition inside the game. So you take that option, you go from 3 ammo to 2 ammo, and then of course 1 and 0. And then you have to wait until you find an orc who happens to have 1 ammo's worth of arrows on him, whatever the case may be. I like that play style. I think it's very cool. It provides consumables, which is a very old school, traditional thing to do, to really rely on those consumables. So I'm down with that. For anybody who hasn't played, here's another example. So the hack and slash rule for Dungeon World. You attack, and let's say you get that middle ground success at a cost. One of the options is you can do damage but you'll take damage. And then if you get a full success, you can do normal damage and not get attacked, or you can do extra damage and get attacked. It provides you some options in game to be able to do some neat stuff. If you're really confident that you're going to be able to put down this monster, attack with extra force is probably a better option if you happen to get that high success. So I'm definitely on board with that. The next bit is gritty combat. I kind of mentioned it just a minute ago. Let's go back to the Ranger for a second. If you do the non-spellcasting Ranger, he has an ability called Healing Salves. They do not work in combat, and they take a minute to apply. This is why I said I think you might like the non-casting Spell Ranger, because of this Healing Salve idea. I've done games in the past where I had Healing Salves, but my players were smart, and they got banana leaves, and they put the pulpus between there. Basically, they would rip off the one leaf and stick the other leaf to their chest or exposed arm or whatever it was that was injured. And the healing wouldn't happen instantly. What would happen is at the beginning of the next round, they would get their heal roll after that. And then, I'm sorry, she's just being a pain. And then after the heal roll went off, they would continue. It was kind of like taking a delayed cure potion. So this is like taking it to the next logical step, which fits with the theme of having slow natural healing, is to have this out of combat only natural healing method. Which you could actually carry over to your cleric too. Just say that there is no cure spell in my world, and that's huge. That's changing the status quo of your world. Out of all the rules you mentioned for gritty combat, if it fits your theme, I'm on board with them. The one I would suggest, which I'm going to use now, thanks to a live chat that we had on Juice's channel. If I can find a link to that, I'm going to try and put it as a little cue card right over here. For everybody who knows me, I'm new to YouTube, so let's see how that works. Maybe? All right, so essentially inside that hangout, or the live chat, I should say, we talked about the fact that I hate resurrection. I hate death without a cost. Dungeon World spoiled me a little bit. When you die in Dungeon World, you go to the Grim Reaper, and he says, you can go back, but it will cost you. Here is my deal. And that deal may be something as simple as you have to kill 50 souls and bring them to me, or it may be as drastic as, you know, one day a man will come to you for a favor wearing a dark cloak. You must accept his favor, regardless of the consequences. If you accept that ominous offer, and then 3 games later, a guy with a dark cloak comes up to you with a request to have you kill your best friend, you either kill your best friend or you die. Because death, you can't shirk on a deal with death. And I love that idea. So part of my idea of success with a cost for resurrection is, A, you can get rid of resurrection entirely. That's what I've always done in the past. I'm going to do this now. When you come back from resurrection, you gain a madness. The idea is that you've gone to heaven, you've seen what life is like, drinking in the sweet nectar of the afterlife, partying in Valhalla, eating fruits from the garden of what is the Elysian Fields. There we go. You know, and then you have to go back to the mortal coil. So on your way back, you make a roll on the sanity chart, and let's say you get hypochondriac. Now that player has to play up the fact that they constantly feel sick, they think they're dying, and they might be happy about dying, actually. So it may be like, oh, I'm dying, thank goodness. And it could be a lot of fun. There are some options on that chart that are a little crazy, and if you're using Madness already, you're probably aware of them. So anybody who's considering this new option of resurrection at cost, look at the chart first and just make sure you're ready to take that on as a GM. And some of those options, you may say that because you got resurrected, they cannot be cured, period. Or they require a wish only to be able to have it happen, which is huge. That's another one that I would look at carefully, because some of the options are like you pass out and cannot wake up. If it requires a wish to wake you up, that player is probably going to be out of the game. Their character is going to starve to death and just die again. So consider that one carefully before implementing that. Let's take a look here. All right, traps don't go off a certain percentage of the time. I can see that. I would suggest doing it as maybe a trap quality scale, or doing a trap age scale. Like if it's an older trap, there's a chance that it's probably already malfunctioned or it's gone off and the player's just come across a broken trap. Um, or if you do like a quality scale, the cool thing about that is when your rogue does like disable device on it, he stands a better chance to disable like a poor quality trap with a higher chance of failing if it does go off. And it does kind of fit with that idea. And you could just use the DCs of the traps as your quality scale. Easy enough. All right, next. Oh, we mentioned side initiative at the beginning. That is page 270, I believe it is. Yeah, 270 inside the DMG. Basically, side initiative is you roll for all the bad guys, and then you roll for all the players, or all the good guys and all the players, as it so commonly is sometimes. Give me just 1 second here. All right, so you roll for each side individually, and then if there's like a third side, logically you would roll for the third side in that combat. I think it's really intuitive. It can lead to a little bit of a problem, I guess is the best way to put it. If you have multiple sides, it could provide a tactical advantage to those that go forward in a substantial way. Because you mentioned that you're kind of wanting to get away from power gaming as a whole. My thing is if my side was going to go it and I wanted a power game, I want to get my dexterity as high as possible, so I'm going to make sure that there's at least one finesse fighter in my group who will always be my guy rolling for party initiative. So if you're going to do party initiative, you may want to consider rotating who does that party initiative. And as another option, the other thing too is sometimes you have those RP moments where players are like counting their kills, like in Lord of the Rings. Well, if they go on the same initiative, it may lose some of that competitive nature. So I do like having initiative based upon like an individual scale. Purely your choice. What I would suggest for anybody who's like me and likes it on a purely initiative scale kind of thing is he mentioned that he wants spellcasters to announce their spells first. On page 270, there's another set of optional rules called Speed Factor. I like that one a lot because it makes your choice about weapons important. It also makes your choice of spells really important. Basically, you get a negative to your initiative or a positive depending on what kind of weapon or spell you're using. For spells, it's a negative based upon the level. For weapons, it's size categories and what the weapon's designed for. So like a finesse weapon gets a +2, heavy weapons get a -2, and large weapons, I believe, is the other one, get a -2. Let me pull up 270. I accidentally closed my book right before recording this. Here we go. Actually, it's page 271 where the actual chart is. So heavy weapons get a -2 and two-handed weapons get a -2. So here's the interesting thing. In D&D right now, it's a question of I pick a weapon based upon dice. Let's just be honest. If I'm a fighter, it's logically better for me to go heavy weapons as my fighting style, get to reroll ones, than pick out like a great sword that does 2d6, or if I'm a barbarian, pick out the great axe, because with my barbarian orc idea, essentially with an orc you can once a day get another die worth of damage. So if you use a great sword, it's 2d6 normally, you would get an extra d6, which is not as good as having 2d12 with the great axe. And then barbarians also get a class ability that lets them do the same thing. So you get exponential stack, well, not exponential, but a limited amount of stacking, and it ends up being something like 9 dice worth, which if you figure out 9 d12s versus 9 additional d6s, pretty easy math for your head there as to which one's better. So logically, it makes sense to just pick the weapon that does the most damage, because right now it has no negative effects for carrying it. This creates a reason for it to have a negative effect. And it may not be substantial or something that your characters care about, but it is kind of something that makes it a little more realistic. So the heavy weapon scenario, you have the greatsword. It is heavy weapon and two-handed. That's a -4. So you get the 2d6, but it's -4. Your fencer gets a +2 for using a rapier, and he gets the d6 and finesse damage, and that kind of balances it out, because now your slower combatant, or your logically slower moving weapons are slower to get moving, because Once you establish momentum, you can continue momentum, but getting that momentum established is harder with a heavier object. That's kind of the science behind that. The other, actually no, that actually wouldn't be affected. So that's kind of my opinion on it. I like the speed factor. Had my players not started the 5th edition game before I got the Dungeon Master Guide, I'd be using that one. And let's take a look here. The last one I want to talk about is shields. So you mentioned this came up in Dragon Warriors. I now have to read Dragon Warriors thanks to that. So I love this idea of that shields can block a successful attack. I've got a couple questions for you on it because there wasn't a whole lot of detail, so bear with me here. And I've got some ideas already brewing to kind of help you out here. So thinking in that old school dungeon world kind of idea, like our bow, I want to have our shields have a quality rating, if you will. So a shield that is of average quality, a decent blacksmith can put together, let's say it has 3 uses, or a quality of 3. A good blacksmith could produce a quality 4 shield, a great blacksmith could do a quality 5, and then of course subpar would do a quality 2 or an apprentice, and then like maybe a half-broken shield is like a 1. So having this idea of a 5-point scale, just for simplification, it gives you a limited amount of times that you can block an attack per day, let's say, just to kind of start things off. Actually, let's just say in general, because a normal shield with this mechanic will be disposable, meaning that if your fighter goes out, blocks 3 hits on his average quality shield, that thing is gone. He needs to buy a new one, which I think is kind of cool. So this presents a whole couple set of questions with it, because my concern is if you keep it a static thing and that your shield can just keep deflecting, one, it feels a little counterintuitive to this idea of gritty combat. But 2, what it also does is it gives shields a very strong advantage, to be honest, like really strong advantage. And with them not having the shield master feat in there, that probably does make up for a lot of the stuff that's lost with that feat. But it still seems kind of strong for me just to have this idea that your shield's just not going to break. And here's my idea of how to implement it. I would suggest using a D20. And the reason for that is because if you have a D20, you can impose advantage, disadvantage, and inspiration on that roll as well. So let's say the conditions are terrible, like you're fighting on a cliff. Maybe he has a disadvantage. And then you can take that a step further. It's success with a cost. Let's say a 20 is required, which is a 5% on a normal roll. Advantage, disadvantage changes math, but we're not going to worry about that for the moment. So you have a 5% chance of success on a normal I block with my shield. If you get a 20, no problem. If you get an 18 or 19, success with a cost. Well, in the scenario of I'm fighting on a cliff, I get an 18 on my shield block. Success with a cost. You can block that blow and not take damage, but you're going to lose your shield over the edge. Kind of an interesting idea to apply those two together. Of course, being disadvantaged, he stands a better chance of not blocking the blow anyways, but a whole different thing. So advantage, same thing. You just happen to be in a very good situation. Like let's say, hypothetically, you have the high ground, or you are fighting in the dark and you have dark vision but they don't, or something like that. Really, you have dark vision and they don't is a bad example because then they have disadvantage on attacks. But a situation that would be beneficial to you as the defender gaining you advantage. It's probably going to be pretty limited, to be honest. I would think tactically about the situation if it's good or not. But it then also allows players to use inspiration on that, which I think is a kind of a cool idea. My next question is, how do you want to handle critical hits? My initial thought was allowing I look at it as a player. What I would do. So I roll my critical and I come in for my power stroke and I'm gonna kill the bad guy with this attack, except he put his shield up and he blocks me. And it's not success with a cost, it is straight success. Now my awesome critical just gone. And I don't like that. It's very dissatisfying to the player. I have 2 suggestions for you. One, if it's a critical and he succeeds in blocking, what I would consider is doing something like expend one of the uses of the shield and deal normal damage. It keeps that consumable idea, but it still gives the player a pretty awesome moment that they just take a chunk of that shield out and do some damage to them. You can see stuff like this with Viking movies and documentaries where like Vikings would put up their shield to block, and like some of them would actually like catch the weapon on purpose and twist it over to disarm their opponents. I don't know if you want to go that technical, but what I was getting at is there's a special move that Vikings teach that you can find online. I'll probably say the word wrong. Herstrig, I think is how it's said. But it's the art of fighting like a Viking, where they would do a power swing with the sword and purposely go in to break the shield. And that's what that critical hit could be. It could be breaking the shield, doing some normal damage, but then, you know, the person who's receiving the attack still gets a little benefit out of that shield. So let's talk about success with a cost with this idea. So I do a critical and that opponent has success with a cost. Maybe I disarm their shield and do and do my critical damage or something like that. It kind of depends. My initial thought is it uses 2 uses of the shield and does normal damage, just as kind of a simplification. Or they can let it do the full critical. And me as a player now thinking about defending, I'm going to expend 2 uses of my shield, even if it's only a 3-use shield, because a critical can straight kill you, especially if you're going to have massive damage rules. Having that shield get obliterated is huge. So that's kind of my ideas. The other thing that I wanted to mention, kind of point number whatever that I'm on right now, is magic shields. So in some game systems and some GMs play like this, where a magic item, when destroyed, has a percentage chance, or will, in some cases, explode in your face and kill everybody. Magic shields being consumable items is a problem because of that factor. So my idea is in the magic of the world, to create magic shields. As part of their design, they won't explode when broken that way. Now, if they're sundered or purposely broken, that's a totally different thing. If you're using the shield the way it's designed to block hits, it's not going to go off if it runs out of uses. So there's 2 things that I thought about with this is because if you make it like that and it gets to 0, that your magic shield is kind of loses some of its flair because it can't block anything anymore. My original thought was, okay, when you take a long rest, it comes back. But then I looked back and you were doing slow natural healing rule. And I modified it and I like this rule better. So you do a long rest, you get 1 use of the shield back. So yeah, you've got this magic shield, but it's only got 1 use. And is it worth you carrying that one? Or should you switch to maybe your mundane shield until your magic shield heals? Maybe make it something like the player has to like, I don't know, attune it every day for 10 minutes at the beginning of their day or something like that, just to kind of make it make sense. But I like the idea of this slow recharge shield. If you want to go more high fantasy, the fully recharging shield, every long rest is the way I would go. If you want to go ultra high fantasy and keep this idea of disposable shield, I would say a short rest gives you 1 back and a long rest gives you all of it back. Kind of crazy ideas. Well, to be specific, I would say a short rest that uses hit dice to heal you. Kind of a really epic idea of scale there. And for anybody who's new to hacking games, all it is taking something you like, putting dials on it, and adjusting those dials. I talked about that in another video, talking about that scale, finding that slider and moving it around. Same basic concept, just you start with an initial concept, you play with it, you create some extremes, and you figure out where is good for you. Hopefully, I'll see a response from Tim over at Samwise 7 RPG saying that my shield idea is awesome and give me some thumbs up here. If not, still give me some thumbs up because I kind of like those things, and let me know why you disagree with me. Basically, this channel on Saturdays specifically is about the social aspect of our game. For anybody who's watching this video new to my channel or otherwise, the idea is that my Saturdays are dedicated to helping further our gaming groups that are out there. Like for right now on Facebook, I run with the one-shot tabletop group, the OSG, and I also run with the W3 guys. Right now I'm doing a map project to help out one of the guys that's in the OSG. I've got a game coming up on the W3, and it's a lot of fun just interacting and being social with those guys. We've had some stuff happen over the past week. I'm not going to get into that, but there was one thing that was pointed out that I think is really important. If you are going to be part of these groups, the suggestion is to go out there and be part of these groups. Like, being part of the conversation is definitely fun, and we all do it. But if you don't feel ready to do a game, my suggestion is to join a live hangout. Talk about what you're interested in. Because if you are uncomfortable playing a game because you're inexperienced, it's been a long time, coming into one of those live hangouts and just getting to know us will make us a lot less intimidating. Some of the people on there that people get intimidated by, like some of the guys like Juice, Matt Click, let's see, Lloyd, just like our big name guys that are out there. Talk to them. I mean, honestly, they're normal guys just like us, and you may find, like, especially the big name guys, they're pretty willing to put together a game on the fly for beginners. Like, a lot of them, the reason that they're so popular is because they're putting themselves out there to bring people into the hobby. They're talking about what they enjoy. They're finding out what other people enjoy, and they're kind of orchestrating things, even if they're not participating themselves, so that more people can get involved. So if you get a chance to talk to those guys, please do. I do typically attend some of the live hangouts, so if you do happen to see me in there, give me a shout out, say hi, tell me if you checked out any of the channels that I've mentioned on here, or even my channel. That would be awesome. Now, before I go, I just wanted to kind of go back to it. I mentioned in the world building series I used Samwise 7 RPG on YouTube's divine aspects generator, or domains generator. If you want to check that out, check out the world building series part 3, which I'll try and link over here if I can figure that stuff out. And basically inside there, we kind of talked about it, and he's got some videos that go over each domain, what the inspiration was, how to use this random generator. But if you want to see how I implemented it, that's where my video comes in. He's also got a video where he has implemented it, if I remember correctly. I may be wrong on that one. But it's really cool. He provided a lot of content about some optional house rules that were well thought out. And the reason I suggest that, because it gives you a great introduction to who he is and what he does. He's a real sharp guy, and if you are not currently subscribed to his channel, please check him out. Give him a thumbs up on this video, and let him know that you're supporting his stuff. So for my channel, his channel, and anybody else's channel that happens to be part of my stuff that I'm doing, I would like to just let you guys know that I would like you to give them feedback, or me feedback, or do a video response of your own and let both of us know, so that we can see your opinions on this stuff. Give us a thumbs up, a like, share, a comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Other than that, I'm going to see you guys at the gaming table. I mentioned it before. I should be doing a one-shot, or at least a couple one-shots coming up. The system that I have decided on is Souls of Steel. It is a apocalypse world hack that does mecha. Right now, nobody in the one-shot group is doing mecha, and I don't know why. I like tactical war games and stuff like that, and so I have courted myself as the mecha guy right now. I may pull some other mech systems, like I've got Remnants, Mechton Zeta, but for now, because of the ease of getting into and playing Souls of Steel, that's what I'm going to go with. I'm still reading through the playtest booklet, and it will be a playtest, so there may be some minor complications inside of it, but we'll work through it, and it will be featured on the channel here. Once I feel comfortable and ready with the rule set, maybe in a couple weeks here when my schedule loosens up, I will be posting a probably just a introduction video, kind of telling you guys what my expectations for the game is, what the setting is, and I'm planning at least 3 one-shots. If it picks up in popularity and I have the time to support it, maybe I can do like a mini campaign or something like that. Or my initial thought is to do a series of one-shots and do like I'm the command and you guys are all different mech pilots, and I just assemble teams for special missions. And I think I like that idea. So basically, me assembling a team is getting volunteers for the game. If you've never played Apocalypse World, let me know. I have no problems with new players, just like anybody else in the group usually doesn't have a problem with new players. We'll just work with you to make sure that you understand the basics of it, and I promise you Apocalypse World is probably going to be one of the easiest games you pick up. Some of the wording on the rules might feel a little different, but I'll kind of explain that as we go, and I'll take moments to kind of stop and explain how things work on the first video or two. In fact, I'll probably make an introduction to Apocalypse World video, just kind of giving a brief rundown of what Apocalypse World is, what the rules for Souls of Steel are, and how things are a little different. So on that note, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you at the gaming table.